These days, most career pages have apply here, the call to action. They talk about what the company does. They talk about their culture and values, but very, very broadly, and they give off all their live roles. What we're trying to do is flip the script a little bit. Instead, showing people the ways we work by publishing our behavioral framework right there for everyone to see. We want to talk about how it feels to be a part of our team. What's it going to be like in a day-to-day? We talk about our purpose, not just what we do, but why we do it. What the interview process is going to look like. What efforts do we make in ED&I? What are our commitments in that space? And ultimately, how to be successful. But it doesn't stop there. You need to weave that golden thread across all your communication, from your careers site to your applications, to your interview invites, and so on. For example, here, this is just what we might send somebody who's going for an interview, outlining the capabilities that we're going to be assessing so they know exactly what they're getting involved with. And since launching our Careers Hub, we've seen a huge impact on the candidates. We launched it in Q4 of 2023. Our webpage got 41,000 views, of which nearly 20,000 of those were on our Careers Hub. They made up half of all page views that we had. And actually, we also saw a huge uplift from 13% to 23% conversion rate in the number of people reviewing our adverts to actually applying. The next part I want to talk about is unconscious bias. It's been a common theme of today. And particularly, I want to talk about giving unconscious bias the nudge. I do like the odd transition, by the way, on PowerPoint, so please enjoy. Who here, by show of hands, has either attended or delivered unconscious bias training? Wow, great. I think if I'd asked that a couple of years ago, there definitely would have been that many hands up. So it's really great to see that our industry is moving in the right direction already. I want to talk to you about the next step, nudge theory. For anyone who doesn't know what nudge theory is all about, it's about influencing the decision in the moment it's about to be made. Sometimes you might hear it referred to as whispers as well. The reason this is so important is because while that training that you've all done or been a part of is incredibly valuable, employees forget 80% of what they learn within 30 days if they're not doing something about it. And there's loads of case studies to show that nudge theory really, really works. From the Amsterdam airport using the pictures of flies to convince people to not miss, to a well-known gaming developer using what they call the second look process to make hiring managers do a double take on candidate CVs before deciding to move them forwards or not. Or even Google, sending an automated email to hiring managers the Sunday before their new starter arrives with a checklist of things they should work on. Terrifies me for anyone here who owns the onboarding process as well, that we're reminding them on a Sunday, but we have to meet them where they're at. That's when they're actually thinking about it, right? How we've done it is introduced it into our interviewing process. So during the note-taking process for questions, they'll get a nudge to question some of their biases. Maybe it'll be during the final part where they're tallying up their score, or really any other decision-making process during the interview. And the results speak for themselves. So in Q1, we were really doing nothing. At the end of Q1, we launched our unconscious bias training for 2023. That meant that in Q2, we saw a small marginal impact in the number of females represented at final stage interview. But we also introduced at the end of Q2 our unconscious nudges. And from there, in Q3 and Q4, we saw a better and better representation of females at final stage interview. And I'm really excited to see what we end up reporting in March this year. The final thing I want to talk to you about is peeking behind the curtain through personalization. Yes, it's another transition. Do any of these ring a bell by show of hands? Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Show of hands, anyone been asked that question? Yeah. Or what's your biggest weakness? Yeah, very much a common one. I'll admit, before joining SoEnergy, I was a classic millennial job hopper. 18 months to 2 years, I'd get bored, I'd move on. So I've done my fair share of interviews. I've answered my fair share of these questions. Where do I see myself in 5 years? I used to give the exact same answer. Bit cheeky, but I used to say, hopefully in your position, right? What did the person learn about me from that? Absolutely nothing. What did I learn about the company from that answer? Absolutely nothing. It wasn't personal. It had no value. Now, the reason we ask these same questions over and over and over again is we think they help with equality. Because to create equality, we want consistency. To ensure we've got consistency, we become formulaic. But when we become formulaic, we become inauthentic. We lose that personal connection. So, how do we find a nice equilibrium? I've spoken to quite a few of you today. We all work in a really, really similar industry, or we all do very similar roles. But I wouldn't necessarily ask you all the same questions today. Some of you might find that a bit odd. Some of you might even find that a bit rude, especially if you've already told me the answer. There was a really interesting study released by the University of Herefordshire around kind of equity, specifically in the justice system, but actually I think it applies to what we do as well, which defines consistency and equity as equity operates on the basis of consistent patterns. I think we all agree with that. The application of equity follows established parameters. Those parameters being, what are we trying to assess? What are those capabilities that we care about? And is flexible only in how the consistency accommodates the specific context of the individual cases. So as long as we are assessing the same capabilities, how we go about assessing them can flex depending on the person that's in front of us. Now, this can be done in a lot of different ways. At So Energy, we're lucky enough to partner with a company called Assess First. There are a lot of great behavioral and cognitive testing programs out there. We use theirs. And as part of our process, every single applicant completes one of their profiles, which means we get all of this information on a candidate, from what culture they're going to thrive in most, to what they're most driven by, their strengths, their weaknesses, their chance of success in the role, their chance of feeling fulfilled in that role, and even the affinity they'll have to their hiring manager. Off the back of this, we can get really curated questions that are personalized to that individual. In real terms, it can look like this. Two people going for the same job, Jane and Ali. We want to understand their business acumen, their personal development, and their working styles. For business acumen, the question applies. Give us an example of a time when you've had to trade off between cost and quality and how you made that decision. We can ask them both that exact same question and keep it consistent. Similarly with personal development, tell me about a time when you've been asked to carry out a task that you've never undertook before. Applicable to both candidates. But in this situation, we know that Jane has already demonstrated she's incredibly flexible in her approach to work, whereas Ali really likes structure. So asking them the same question seems irrelevant. We don't get to peek behind that curtain and see that person's real approach. Instead, we adapt those questions. You seem to be flexible in your approach to work. We call it out. How would you organize yourself when you're assigned an important task? Versus Ali's question, which is, again, calling it out. You have a very structured approach to your work. Tell me about a time when your project or target has changed due to circumstances beyond your control. We are still scoring them on the same capabilities, so consistency exists, but how we approach it is through personalization. I'm keeping it short because I know we haven't had a lot of time for questions today. So my few takeaways would be, and if there's any representatives from Disney here, I know you're super hot on your IP, please do not sue me. This is Disney. This is Eva, if anyone doesn't know, the character from WALL-E. I believe it stands for extraterrestrial vegetation something, but I do not remember. To me, it stands, someone can tell me, by the way, if they do know. It stands for empowering. We want to make our candidate experience empowering. Set them up for success. Make sure they have the best opportunity to showcase their talents. It means valuable. The experience should be an even exchange of value. They should learn about us as much as we learn about them. And finally, equitable. We need to make sure the process is personalized to them and allow those to showcase their talents effectively. Thank you very much.